Welcome back to another episode of Swoop, Luke. As you know, I say this pretty much yearly, but when it comes to draft time, I have sweet FA knowledge about the draft. So I let the experts come on and talk about it. In this special episode, straight from ESPN, which is absolutely huge. Jasper Chellappah.
Draft expert Jasper Chellappah in the studio.
Pod, Matt Walsh, Jake Michaels, ESPN's draft expert Jasper Chellappah.
How you going, brother?
Swoopy, thank you so much for having me. I've enjoyed your work from afar, not quite as a Collingwood fan, but the way that you go about things, especially is kind of that forefront of content creation for clubs as a fan, is pretty awesome to see, and it's the way of the future, mate. So you've really pioneered this.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. That's a nice little ego boost going into this video. But look, man, tell us a little bit about yourself for everyone sort of unaware. Working for ESPN, the main draft guy there.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to get the call up about 3 years ago to come on board, and there's a great team under Matt Walsh at ESPN Australia who loves their AFL. They've got their own podcast and stuff going, but they wanted to kind of evolve their draft content as well. So they've given me the guidance and allowed me to really do what I want with that. So the last 3 years has been a ball, but I've been following the draft for basically a decade now. I'm only 26 years old, but I took an interest to it like in my teenage years, and from that point on I've kind of built up to a point where I'm able to talk to a lot of these kids coming through, and I've found over the last few years in particular, getting to know the kids and talking to coaches and talking to recruiters, you get a better understanding of what you're looking for in a prospect, and who's going to perform at the next level and who's not going to as well. So that kind of stuff I've really enjoyed about the draft, learning about it the last couple of years, and that's where I'm at right now.
That's incredible, man. So you're going to all like the under 18 carnivals or reporting on all that sort of stuff and really seeing them grow. It must be like, and I kind of get it when I, watch young guys at training and then they come through and they debut. You must sort of get that fire in your belly when you've seen these guys from 16s or whatever it may be. Then they get sort of drafted, and like, you were a little bit a part of that journey as well for them.
Oh man, they feel like your kids sometimes, especially if you get along with some of them really well. Like, I can't speak highly enough of the young men that they are, especially the top guys who have for the last 2 years they've been put in front of microphones and put in front of cameras their entire lives while still going through school and juggling all that comes with that. Like, they finished up the combine a few weeks ago, and now they're going to go into exams, and then they can focus on the draft. It's a ridiculous season to have when you're turning 18, you're figuring out so much stuff about yourself while still trying to perform and be a professional athlete, basically. It's pretty incredible how much they have to go through, and they're all really stand-up men, which is great to see.
Yeah, no, it's like going back to, so I'm 33, so going back to year 12, which was so far, feels like so long ago, 2010. I was struggling to juggle a job at McDonald's and exams. So I could only imagine training and getting interviewed and by all 18 clubs. It's absolutely ridiculous. Look, we'll get straight into the draft. Before we talk about Collingwood's hand and all that sort of stuff, what's your initial thoughts on this draft? I've heard a couple of different things where it doesn't really bat too deep, and that's where the recruiters and stuff will make their money pretty much from the end picks, and because it's filled with father, sons, and academies at the start. What's your kind of read on it?
Well, we've been blessed the last 2 seasons, I think, with really deep drafts, but it also has the talent and the names up the top. Obviously, Harley Reid comes off the bat there. But past Harley, it was also just insanely fun talent to watch and to really get to know as well. So, like, I think the year before with Harley, it was Jed Walter and Colby McCurcher and those types of players who were rated really highly. And then last year, obviously, it batted really deep, where you had guys like even a Harvey Langford, who looks like an absolute star in the making, towards the back of the top 10. So that depth, I think, is something that this draft lacks, and it's probably the one bit where you talk to recruiters and they go, we're looking at trading out of this draft for the first time in a while, probably the last 2 to 3 drafts. Clubs are finding it really difficult to get into the first round, whereas this year there'll be clubs, especially the likes of Hawthorn, who tried to grab merit but couldn't, and now have this draft collateral where they'll probably be looking at trading out and struggling to do so for first round picks.
Geez, so that's pretty huge. I know there was sort of rumblings of Collingwood wanting to get into the first round of this draft. Is that something that's a possibility? Because I know that, there's live trades with all the draft picks and stuff like that. Is that a possibility?
Well, I think Collingwood saw an angle to do so this year out of all years because it might be easier than it ever really has been, especially with Tassie coming around the corner for the Collingwood list. It makes sense to try and get some top end talent right now. I know a lot has been made of the Collingwood age profile right now. I've read an article from Jake Nile, I think this morning,
Yep.
and the headline was something like you need a NASA telescope to see the young talent around Nick Dacos on this
Yeah.
Pies list, and I don't think it's that bad. I think you look at Ned Long playing basically the whole season off a
Yeah.
rookie list. You've got a couple injured guys who I have really high hopes for, and Harvey Harrison and Reef McInnes. Ed Allen got good exposure. Charlie
He
West
did.
looks like he's
Yep.
going to be a pretty impressive player in the future. He just needs a little bit of time to develop, but right now for Collingwood, you need to add to that young talent because they're going in a different direction to what they were 12 months ago. They're still trying to compete, obviously, but 12 months ago they were selling the farm for Dan Houston in an opportunity
Yep.
to go and do that. And Fly, went on the record and said that it's players, not picks for this club. And I think that made sense 12 months ago. I think 12 months on, well, at round 15, to be fair, it would look like a masterstroke and you were going to romp your way to the flag. I think
Yeah.
12 months on now, you're probably looking at the decline of a lot of those kind of 30-year-old players, and the end is near for them. And then you're looking at the depth of what you can get. And when you go to the draft, you're doing it for two things, in my opinion. You're trying to get depth if you're competing still. You're trying to add depth, but you're trying to do it on the cheap. These are the cheapest contracts you can get in the AFL. And if you want to go for a Butters next year or a Ben King next year, when you're going to need $1.5, $2 million per year in the cap to do so, you need to supplement the list with a lot of young talent that can add depth, but also is on really cheap contracts.
Yeah, and we kind of saw that last year where, we did sell the farm for Houston and then Schultz as well. And we only had, our first pick was pick 47 from memory. And that was Cochrane because we bid
Joel, yeah.
against Sydney and Sydney didn't match it. And, and then Cochrane and then it was West and then it was Hayes like that. And those are three picks virtually in the 50s, which has been crazy, and they're all coming on really well.
Yeah.
Will Hayes has just signed a 2-year contract extension. You mentioned West. Cochrane has got so much talent and ability. A little bit was injured at the start of the year and stuff like that. So with our draft picks at the moment, now we start at 39. You think that would probably push up to about 33, 34 with all the other selections sort of coming through?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll bump up because there are so many picks in the 20s and 30s, especially for the Gold Coast and Brisbane, those kinds of teams who need to match really high-end bids.
Yep.
That those picks are actually going to come in a fair bit, and they're going to add to the draft points that you have on the table as well. I'm sure we'll get into some of the kids that are club tied to the Pies, but it's a funny one where those picks in the third round are actually going to become kind of pseudo second rounders in the end because there are going to be so many bids kind of dissolved because of points matching.
Yeah, and I think that'll obviously come into play into the thinking as well when we're trying to, if we do look at getting into that first round or early in the second round. I guess we can just get right into the meat of it. I was reading and this is pretty much why I wanted to have you on, because I was reading your draft rankings these last couple of months, and you just put one out, and I'll put the link down below if everyone wants to check it out. It was about a couple of weeks ago. One of our NGA prospects that we absolutely love, McCarthy, Zack McCarthy. You had him in your top 40. You had him about 36 or 37 over the last couple of months. How do you see him coming on?
Well, he's one that kind of came out. He missed round one with a little hammy, and he came back and then just exploded. And he, for an Oakley Chargers side who really struggled to start the season, he was probably the shining light out of all of it. But I think the way that you project him is going to be fascinating to watch because he could play all three areas of the ground right now. He's a 200 centimeter, really skinny, tall forward. I would describe him as for the Oakley Chargers, but the athletic profile is what really stands out. So, the 6 minute 36 2K, I think that's just it's above average for a 200 centimeter player running that. The 3.187 20-meter sprint, that's above average for a 200 centimeter player. So he's got this above average athletic profile that comes across when you watch him as well. He's really mobile. So I think the best football he played was probably as a ruckman. He's a little bit undersized in terms of his size, but he just has a great bounce to him in the air, and then he follows up at ground level. He can link chains with hands. He loves to get involved around the ground. He leads for marks and takes a lot of marks on the outlets, out on the wings and the flanks as well. I love all that about him as a modern day ruckman. I have the questions about, is he going to build up the size in due course to be able to play as a genuine first choice ruck, and is he going to embrace the physicality of the role as well? Because right now he loves to run and jump and kind of avoid that physicality, which I
Yep.
understand because of his size. But the idea of what he could be as a ruckman really excites me. But right now, I think clubs would probably see him more as that third tall, kind of really rangy, high half forward kind of type of tall.
Could you see him as a pretty good spot for Dan McStay, like as a forward second ruck option? Like that kind of what we brought Buller on for as well, and sort of what we don't have in the VFL at the moment.
Yeah, the real interest for me is going to be in the new ruck rules and the bench being now
Yes. Yep.
five people on the bench. Is do teams play two genuine rucks, and maybe that position actually goes out of vogue because
Yeah.
it used
Interesting.
to be such an important role, especially over the last 5 years, where clubs went away from the two ruck system. It was too slow, and you lost an extra runner around the ground to having Dan McStay in the side instead, where he can hold his own in the ruck for 20 to 30% while Darcy Cameron gets his
Yep.
break. Now I'm wondering if it's a situation where you can play the two genuine rucks, and if so, then you can keep that guy at home. Instead, I know for Essendon personally, you'd much rather have Peter Wright in the forward 50 than rucking 25 to 30% of the
100%.
game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So ideally, you're in a position where he's either a genuine second ruckman that can play in a different position, or he's a genuine full forward and can be, can hold his own as one of the two best key forwards in your team.
So where do you sort of see him? I know you're in your rankings. You had him in that late 30s. Do you see him getting bid on any earlier than where he's expected to go?
Yeah, he'll go higher than that, I think. I'm a
Okay.
little bit lower on him, and I think that's mostly because I'm not convinced that he's gonna have a position at the next level, and that probably comes back to the ruck issue is that I'm
Yep.
not sure that he embraces the physicality. It's not that he's not going to be an appropriate size, but I'm not sure he's a super physical, aggressive type of ruckman that I really like personally. And
Yep.
as a forward, the craft probably isn't quite there yet as well. But he's 18 years old. It feels ridiculous to nitpick about some of these
Yeah. Yeah.
prospects
Yeah.
when the athletic profile is so good and he can kick goals from 55 meters out and that kind of stuff. So, you know, take all of this with a grain of salt. But for me, I think he's probably more in that 20 to 35 range in the draft, which will be, I mean, most of those picks will come in the first round in the end.
Yep.
So it could end up that you're matching a bid on night one for Zack McCarthy, and I think
Wow.
that's definitely a show of faith from clubs in what he could be at the next level. His upside is really, really good.
Yeah, and I've sort of got into him, got into the sort of our NGA prospects a little bit more this season, and highlights and all that sort of stuff. And I love what he brings, and I love the idea just of him and West and now Buller in that forward line, because it's about, like, I don't know, I know you're not a Collingwood supporter, but picking Charlie West last year was the first time we picked a key position player since, I think, Brown and Reed back in like 2009 or some. It was crazy, man. It was just
Oh my
absolutely
God.
ridiculous. Yeah, we Derek Hine loves an inside mid and a
Yeah.
back flanker. That's why we've got about 20 back flankers in the VFL at the moment who can't get a game. So the prospect of going back to back with key forwards or big forwards is incredible. Another guy that we're looking at is Saxena as well. He's sort of come from absolutely nowhere as an NGA prospector, as a crafty small forward. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, Jai's he's about as smooth moving as you get. When you watch
Yeah.
him, he is like so silky with the ball. He kind of runs on top of the grass. I know it doesn't make sense when people say that, but I think when you watch him, you're like, oh, he's so
Yeah.
smooth. 179 centimeters, so a decent size for a small forward, but he's bone thin. He, he's really, really skinny. He probably doesn't have the athletic profile of the best small forwards that you see. Usually they're quite quick or agile or have an incredible leap on them so they can play above their size like a Billy Elliott. So what he's going to have to do, and it's what he's good at, is his skill and class and smarts to get to the right spot, to get to the drop of the ball in time, and to be one touch with his hands at ground level, to be really composed under pressure. I think he kicked a lot of his goals from open play, which is a great sign for a small forward. A lot of these guys coming through the ranks who kick a lot of goals aren't rated that well by recruiters because they draw a lot of free kicks, or they get marks out the back of packs, and they don't do the hard stuff, or the more important stuff of kicking goals in open play. And Jai does that. So that's a huge tick for him. I think he's later in the draft as a prospect for other clubs, but you've got the opportunity to rookie list him as a category B rookie if he does get through the whole draft as well. I know Collingwood hasn't nominated any of these guys just yet, but you can be rest assured that McCarthy will be headed to the Pies, and I think Saxena will be within their calculations for what they can be doing, especially if they can get him as a Cat B rookie. I think that's a great win.
Now, explain that a little bit before we sort of get more into Saxena. Just the notion of going into that, putting your stamp on these guys. I know we didn't with nominating these guys. I know we didn't with McGuan, and we'll talk about McGuan a little bit in a second. Do you have to nominate them before you can bid on them? Is that what has to happen?
You need to go into the draft telling the AFL that you'll be nominating them as an NGA. So those two are NGAs, or as a father-son as well in Tom McGuan's case, which didn't happen. But I expect them to be nominated. We'll see what happens with Saxena, because the Pies are in an interesting position where I think they'll use 2, 3, maybe 4 draft picks depending on what happens on the night. But if someone falls, you match a bid on McCarthy, you've got pick, say, 45 left over once bids all kind of come in. If someone falls and you really like them, and then you like another guy, maybe it just ends up that he's the odd one out of that situation, and they're going to have their own rankings on their own draft board, and if Jai's not up there for him, they're not going to take him. It's a cruel business, but that's kind of the situation that I think he'll find himself in, and it's going to be a long wait on night 2, I'd reckon.
Yeah, so I guess a little bit on that as well. It would have been the same for McGuan, where they just didn't rate him highly enough. I know he started the season a little bit on fire, a smaller inside mid. They sort of pushed him to the wing in the different sort of carnivals. But when he played in the VFL for the Pies, I think he was about 17 at the time, or just turned 18. He wasn't doing a lot, but small body, small player going up against these senior guys.
He's super classy, isn't he? And I know you would have watched a lot of him, because Pies fans have been excited about him. I think he started, in the top 20 range for me because he had a great bottom age campaign. And I think as other boys have kind of grown around him, he hasn't quite grown. Still 178 centimeters, still quite thin framed, and he needs to build his size, obviously. But he's a pretty good runner. He's really classy with ball in hand. He makes the right decisions. He doesn't bite off too much. I think he links change really well as a wingman or an outside runner or a forward flanker. Maybe we'll see what happens at the next level. The situation for McGuan, which was it looked really harsh on the outside, but from Collingwood's point of view, they needed to find the points to match McCarthy, and they're looking at a bid at him at 25. And as time stands, they're gonna potentially need more points. We'll see where that sits when the bid is made, but they need to find the points to actually match their number 1 target, who's club tied, and that's a huge win to get a top 3 or 4 key forward prospect in this draft onto the books without having to go out and get him. That's a great result for the Pies. And then you're looking at the residuals left over, where it's Saxena and Tom McGuan and Doug Kerr, and you're going, how do we fit all these guys into the list when there are other guys that we also want as well? So you look at the draft board and you go, well, if Tom McGuan is in our top 50 and we're expecting only 55 to 60 picks to be taken, let's tell him right now, before he gets his hopes up too much, that we're not going to be taking him to the national draft. But if you get through to the rookie draft, we'll have a good look at you and we'll work it out. So I think that's the situation. I think it was really fair from Collingwood to do that so far out. It gives him the opportunity to do more club interviews, for other clubs to take a deeper look at him, because he's not club tied in the national draft anymore. I think it was really fair.
Yeah, and you're right. It did look harsh from the outside looking in, but then you sort of dissect it a little bit more, and you hear what Lepper has to say, and you hear what the experts sort of had to say, and you go, okay, it's harsh, but it's the best thing. It's the best thing for him. And I think you summed it up pretty well. You mentioned Doug Kerr. Now, he was NGA prospect, did his ACL last season, is a tall, really tall midfielder. Do you think he's a chance, not even just at the Pies, just to go at the moment?
I don't think he's a national draft prospect, but what I will say about him is that at the Chargers, he was probably their second best player throughout most of the
Wow.
season, next
Yep.
to Sam Grill. I mean, as an inside midfielder, there are a few players who could physically match him in junior football. Yes, he played as an overager, but he missed basically his
Yep.
whole season, draft season, due to that ACL. But 192 centimeters, really big hulking frame, can play a little bit forward as well, which I think appeals to clubs having that positional flexibility. You're not just a Braden Sear or at the next level where if you can't play inside mid, you're probably not in the team kind of type of
Yep.
player. But for me, I think he's probably more of a rookie selection. I think he looms as a really good option as a train-on player if Collingwood
Mm.
keeps a list spot available, because you want to see what he can do in multiple roles where he didn't really get that opportunity at the Chargers. You want to see if he can improve on his athletic base, where it's probably not ideal as a runner, as an outside ball user. Those are the big detractors from what he can do. But there's no questioning that he can find the ball. He can be really assertive and dominant as an inside mid. We just need to see more from him, and hopefully he gets an opportunity on a list, because I think there's a little bit to develop in Doug.
Yeah, and you're right about the SSP stuff. Collingwood have had so much success with their
Yeah.
SSPs. Sullivan, Markov is now a premiership player as an SSP. So there is always an opportunity there, and I know we've opened up quite a few rookie spots as well now going into this draft. But we've talked about everyone that the Pies fans know of. Do you have any sort of curveballs that you think might fit into Collingwood's needs, knowing that we do probably need another mid, we probably need another defender as well?
Yeah, I was surprised to see a couple delisted free agents, and the one that makes the most sense to me for Collingwood is Jacob Blight out of
Yep.
Richmond. I'm really surprised that he was delisted, just given his age, his ability to run. He took out their 2K time trial in the preseason. I think he has lapses in concentration. I don't know if that comes across on the TV, but I go to a lot of games for my job at Triple M, and you watch him, kind of playing on his direct opponent, and he's doing all this stuff right, 100 meters off the ball, and then he just like gets ball watching a little bit for 2 seconds, and his opponent's ducked out the back, and if he's on,
Yep.
a Jack Gunston type, they're just too crafty, and they get to the right spot, and he can't get there in time with his closing speed. So that kind of stuff, if you can get into a situation where you're getting coached by the Collingwood assistants, I think there's real upside in what he presents at the next level as a really cheap rookie list option to listed free agent, obviously out of Richmond. So I
Yep.
would love to see him get an opportunity with Collingwood. I think that'd be a really good home for him. And the Lord knows that you need some more key defensive depth
Oh my God.
right
Yeah,
now.
we definitely do.
In the draft, there are a few guys I really like who I can see sliding right now, just based on talking to recruiters, and they don't see eye to eye with me on a few of these guys. Fred Rodriguez is one that I still really, really like. He was in my top
Okay.
five to start the year. He's still in my 20s right now. He took out WA's MVP. He was their captain. He's got leadership ability. He's how I describe him is he is one of the silkiest ball users you'll ever see, but he just doesn't get much of it. He,
Interesting. Okay.
he
Okay.
as an on baller, he kicks off left foot, he kicks off right foot. You won't know which side he is his natural foot. I'd call him ambidextrous.
Yep.
He's got a little bit of burst to get out of trouble and to find targets. He's composed. It's just what he does without the football and finding the ball is his biggest issue, which you don't say much of for the kids coming through the pathways. Usually they can find a hell of a lot of it, but they
Yeah.
don't know what to do with it. So he's a little bit different, where I think if he gets into the right environment, he could add immediate depth as a guy who could play on a wing or a half forward, and just play a bit more of a role where he doesn't need to get the ball, but he can run
Okay.
fat side of the wing all day, and he can use it well when he gets it. So I would love to see him get an opportunity. I think Collingwood would be a good home for him. Another one, I know, usually during the draft process, the guys who slide are usually the guys who have been injured. So you look at Doug Kerr last year, who probably would have been picked up had he not done his ACL. This year, Liam Heatherton is a key forward out of the Murray Bushrangers, who I think was in my top two or three key forwards coming into the season in that top
Oh.
20 range,
Yep.
but had back issues throughout the year, just didn't play a game of footy in the end. And I still think a club's going to get a bargain here where they can just sit on him for a couple of years and develop him, and hopefully he comes along really nicely. I can imagine him next to Charlie West, who's that more athletic type. Liam Heatherton is this real, kind of bull in the goal square, really strong
Ooh, love
presence,
that.
strong marking, bit of Travis Cloak about him. We'll see where he goes in the end. I'm pretty sure he'll be picked up in the national draft, but it might be later than he deserves to be taken.
Yeah, that sounds into another Travis Cloak sounds absolutely bloody enticing. Look, you touched on delisted free agents. I want to give you two names that have just popped up. Both top 15 picks. One of them was a top 3 in Will Phillips. The other one, Ben Hobbs, was pick 13. And you mentioned a little bit earlier about if some players, if they can't play more than one position, they're pretty much done for. And that's how I saw Ben Hobbs his last couple of years. Wasn't inside mid, especially in his draft year. Essendon pushed him out to like a half forward role, and he just couldn't really get going, couldn't get into their midfield, which, it's fair enough. You got Zack Merritt and all those other sort of guys that are there. I know Collingwood were pretty interested in him last season, at the end of last season in 2024. What do you see Hobbs and Phillips looking like?
They were interested in him last year, as well as Richmond, which is interesting. Yep. 12 months on, he's played basically every game of the season, but I think clubs have realised if he can't get a gig in the Essendon midfield, he's probably a long shot for us. He's the biggest criticism I have of him, and he's a strong, brave kid, and I really like him. I got to know him pretty well during the draft process in 2021, but he has not improved his foot skills at all coming through the pathways into 4 years in the system now, and it kills you at half forward. You cannot have bad ball users going inside 50. You can't have bad decision makers going inside 50 as well. I think that's where Lockie Sullivan was able to prove that he could play that role. He's a midfielder all his life, comes into Collingwood, gets his opportunity through the SSP, as you say, and then can play deep forward as a pressure forward or a high half forward, because he at least makes right decisions. He's unselfish. He gives the hand pass when he needs to. He can finish his chances. Yeah, that stuff is gold in the forward 50 when you've got no time. Ben Hobbs, unfortunately, when he has time, he just makes the wrong decisions, and he needs to play as an inside midfielder. I think he could win multiple, state league best and fairest wherever he goes as a midfielder. I'm just not sure he's going to crack it as a top 3 choice midfielder for an AFL team. Yep. As depth, why not? At the very least, he's going to, make your Collingwood VFL side bloody good. So, why not if you've got an extra list spot remaining? Will Phillips is an interesting one for me in terms of what he could do defensively. As a tagger, I don't know if you want to have a designated tagger on your list, but I think that would be his role if he finds another home. He doesn't like kicking the ball. He always looks to hand pass it. He doesn't want a lot of the ball as well. I think he knows his limitations in that regard. But I remember that game where he tagged Nick Dacos maybe 2 years ago now. Yep. And they subbed him off at 3/4 time or something. And I think it might have been the game where Bobby Hill had Mark of the Year. Potentially,
I think it was the game where it was a game where Kangaroos were up by like 50 points, and we came back because they subbed out Will Phillips. Yeah, Nick Dacos ran riot. Yeah.
It's just the most ridiculous, decision you'll ever see for a coach. But that kind of job, if you want to have a designated tagger on your list, I think it works well. But that's giving up, a centre bounce slot for a tagger for a premiership contending side. I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting sort of draft here. We saw just an insane trade period, and I assume the draft is going to be a little bit crazier than that. Jasper, before we wrap up, any quick thoughts about the Pies just going forward into 2026?
I think you're at the lowest of the lows. You're in the trough right now of your Pies fandom over the last 12 months, where you've crashed out of finals, and Pendle's had an injury, and you're looking at your older guys. Jeremy Howe couldn't get on the park, and is the end coming for Sidey, and all this stuff going on in trade period where Myercheck leaves. Billy Elliott was thinking about leaving because he felt disrespected. All this kind of stuff going on, where this is the lowest of the lows for Pies fans right now. It's going to build up and build up and build up. We haven't even spoken about Jordan De Goey apparently being shopped around without his knowledge. I don't know if you're a believer of that or not. He's come out and denied it, but unfortunately, as these things don't come from nowhere, and he'd probably be the last one to find out if he was being shopped around. So you're at the lowest of the lows right now for Collingwood fans. You're going to slowly climb your way up. You're going to hit fever pitch for preseason. You're going to come out in round 1 and hopefully have a good win, and then everything will be away, and you're going to win the flag again, and all the supporters will be up and about. So I think right now you just got to hold on for dear life, Swoop, and make sure that you're getting through with all these fans, just making sure they get the content that they need over a long off season to make sure that they're really optimistic heading into round 1.
That's it. And we're looking for a really good draft period coming up. Jasper, thank you so much, mate. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy man in this period, but guys, I'll leave the links for all Jasper's stuff below. That article that we just talked about, follow him on Twitter. He loves a bit of a tweet. Jasper, thank you so much, mate.
Lots of love, Swoopy.
Thanks, brother. Cheers.